Hello everyone. Tonight, we begin with a question about what it really felt like to wake up in a Viking village. Not in a video game, not in a glossy Netflix reenactment, but in the damp, drafty, grumbling heart of a 9th century Scandinavian winter. Because that's where you are now. You're not a chieftain. You're not a warrior with braids and a fur cloak. You're just you. And right now, your bed is a pile of hay stuffed inside a wooden frame wedged between a snoring uncle and a sack of barley. There's a flea biting your calf. Your shoulders ache from sleeping curled in a ball, and somehow your toes are both numb and itchy. So before you get cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really vibe with what I'm doing here. And tell me, where are you tuning in from? What's the time there? I love seeing where this little campfire of stories reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't open your eyes yet. The air is too cold. Your nose already hurts from the dry, smoky air drifting through the longhouse. You pull the wool blanket tighter, but it's not much of a blanket. It smells like goat and damp earth, and honestly, it is goat. There's no sunrise, here not really. Just a slow shift in the smoke-filtered light as the hearth embers glow a little brighter. You can hear someone poking at them. The scrape of iron, a grumble, a sneeze, then someone steps over your legs and trips on your elbow. They don't say sorry, because in this world that's not a thing people say yet. Breakfast is already being scraped into bowls. If you were hoping for pancakes, or eggs, no. You get sour curds, yesterday's fish jerky, maybe some thin gruel with a hair in it. Protein rich, yes. Enjoyable. Not really. The wooden spoon is cold against your lips. There's no salt, just chew swallow. You sit on the edge of the bed frame, feet dangling over packed dirt. You want to stretch, but the ceiling is so low, you hit your elbow on a beam. The walls sweat with moisture. Every surface smells like soot and sweat. And still the chickens inside the house with you are somehow having a better morning. Historically, Viking homes weren't cozy cabins. They were functional smoke boxes, built low to retain heat, sure, but that came with a price. The central hearth was the only source of warmth, light, and cooking. There were no chimneys, just a smoke hole in the roof, which, let's be honest, is doing nothing right now. Your lungs. They're just full of history and privacy. That's a modern invention. Everyone in your family sleeps, eats, argues, and coughs in the same single room. Your cousin is trying to pick something out of their ear with a twig. Someone else is arguing over whose turn it is to feed the pigs. You try not to make eye contact with the dog. He knows you're weak. And here's a quirky little tidbit. Some Viking longhouses included animals inside the living quarters, not just for convenience, but for body heat. Imagine falling asleep next to a farting goat and waking up with a hoof in your ribs. Congratulations, you're officially part of the ecosystem now. Historians still debate whether these early mornings were truly communal bonding moments or just survival grinds. One camp argues that shared labor and meals strengthened kinship bonds. Another says realistically it was probably a lot of low-level resentment mixed with mutual body odor. As the haze of sleep lifts your tasks for the day begin to take shape. But before we face chores, we need to deal with something more urgent, your bladder. And that, friend, is not going to be fun. You stand outside with an armload of firewood that's heavier than your dignity. Your fingers have gone from numb to stabbing pain to a kind of weird tingling that probably isn't good. The path to the edge of the village is just mud, hard frozen mud, with deep boot prints and the occasional steaming surprise left behind by livestock. You dodge most of it, not all of it, and now nature calls. desperately. You ask where the bathroom is. Someone laughs. Then they just point to the woods behind the goat pen. No instructions, no shelter. Just a vague gesture and the expectation that you'll figure it out. There is no outhouse, no toilet seat, no privacy. You wander past a few curious pigs and find a semi-secluded patch of trees. The cold air is so brutal it feels personal. You crouch awkwardly, balancing with one hand on a tree root, praying that your fur tunic doesn't betray you. There are no leaves, just sticks. And that's when you realize what they meant by wiping. A stick. You're supposed to wipe with a stick. Not a smooth one either, more like a slightly broken twig with attitude. Mainstream historical fact, Vikings didn't have dedicated latrines like we do. Archaeologists have found pits outside longhouses that functioned as toilets, essentially holes in the ground, sometimes covered with wooden boards. But for many, daily relief happened in the wild. Quirky tidbit. There's some evidence that Viking women may have carried small, sharpened hygiene sticks in their belts, used both for grooming and toilet needs. Dual purpose. Zero comfort. You finish the awkward task trying to maintain a sliver of dignity as you stand and rewrap your clothing. There's no soap, no water, and you don't dare touch your face for the rest of the morning. You wipe your hand on your tunic anyway, which smells like old fish and smoke, so nothing's really improved. Back in the village, someone hands you a bucket. It smells like fermented sadness. You're told to dump the night waste outside the fence. You carry it like it's a sacred relic you deeply regret touching. And of course, the wind shifts right as you pour it. The splash pattern is unforgiving. Historians still debate whether Viking villages had formalized waste systems, but in smaller settlements, waste was likely thrown in ditches or used for fertilizing. Sanitation wasn't a priority. Survival was. As you head back into the village, your boots squish ominously. It's unclear whether it's water or something worse. You don't ask. No one else does either. Your reward for this noble act: more chores. You're pointed toward a woman with impressive shoulders and an expression that could crack stone. She hands you a rake made of bones and tells you to clear the goat pen. Quickly, she says, as though you've already wasted her time simply by existing. The goats are not amused by your presence. One headbutts you in the thigh. Another chews on your tunic. You begin to suspect that they run this place. After half an hour of hauling straw and slush and things that are definitely not straw, you look up to see two children running by. One of them is carrying an axe. Not toy-sized, full-sized. They argue about who gets to sharpen it first. No one stops them. You blink and try to pretend it's normal, because here it is. Lunch, you wish. You're handed another dried fish. This one's crunchier. You don't ask questions. Someone offers you a sip of weak mead in a horn cup. You try not to think about where the horn came from, or whose mouth was on it last. As the village prepares for afternoon tasks, you're left with a moment, just one of stillness. You stand near the smokehouse, the air thick with the scent of burned pine and salted meat. A dog limps by with a bone in its mouth. A baby cries in the distance, and somewhere nearby, a man is singing a song that's either about love or death. Possibly both. The sun barely moves yet. Time feels heavy. Your legs ache. Your stomach churns. Your nose runs. And you realize you haven't even made it halfway through the day. Welcome to Viking living. Your hands are starting to blister, and it's not even the hard part yet. A gruff man with more beard than neck waves you over. No name, no smile. Just a gesture that says, "You work for me now." You don't argue. In a Viking village, tasks are assigned based on need-not preference. And arguing means you either get laughed at or smacked with a wooden spoon the size of your forearm. Today, your job is everything. First, you're sent to chop firewood. The axe is dull, the wood is frozen, and your shoulders already ache from hauling waste earlier. You lift the axe overhead swing with all the might of someone trying to impress a crowd that isn't watching, and it bounces off the log like you're attacking a stone. One of the village boys, probably 8, maybe 9, takes the axe, mutters something in Old Norse, and splits the log in a single, terrifying blow. He hands it back to you without breaking eye contact. You thank him, quietly, and decide to split kindling instead. Next up, fish salting. You sit beside a row of gutted trout, their glassy eyes judging your every move. You sprinkle salt with frozen fingers, trying to imitate the rhythm of the older women nearby. They gossip in low tones while working with mechanical precision, occasionally glancing at you the way you'd glance at someone trying to dance at a funeral. They're not hostile, just amused. Mainstream historical fact: Viking households had no concept of a fixed job title. Everyone helped with seasonal and daily tasks as needed. Men, women, children. You could be a warrior in summer, and a thatcher farmer or fisher the rest of the year. Fringe fact: some sources suggest that chores like animal skin tanning were considered so foul that people forced the youngest or least respected members to do it. Congratulations, you've just been asked to fetch a half-rotted deerskin for scraping. You get about 5 steps into this new assignment before being rerouted again. Turns out, the elder's roof is leaking, and apparently you're now a roofer. You climb up using a creaky wooden ladder that definitely fails every modern safety code. Your gloves are wet. Your footing is worse. You pray that if you fall, it'll at least knock you unconscious long enough to skip dinner prep. Historians still debate whether roles in Viking society were rigidly gendered or flexible depending on the size of the community. While larger towns likely saw more division, smaller villages, like this one, expected everyone to pitch in across the board. Even you, with your limp noodle arms and visible confusion. You finally descend from the roof, fingers splintered and stomach growling. You try to look useful without drawing attention, an advanced survival tactic in Viking society. Someone hands you a broom made of bundled twigs and tells you to sweep out the longhouse. Not just yours, all of them. You ask how many that is. They say all. You don't ask again. As you sweep, you find a mouse skull, 2 chicken feathers, something that looks like a toe, but hopefully isn't, and a small wooden doll with no eyes. You set it down gently. It stares at you anyway. You manage to escape for a few breaths of outside air and collapse near a pile of chopped wood. You don't even care that it's half snow. Your fingers are raw. Your legs feel like jelly. Your head itches. You consider how much worse this would be if you were doing it all while pregnant or injured, which historically people often were. This wasn't just a day. This was life. You hear someone shout. More firewood is needed. Your break lasted maybe 90 seconds. You stand up slowly. One boot creaks. Your spine pops. The kid with the axe smirks at you again. You nod. Respectfully. He's probably more dangerous than half the raiders. As the sun dips lower, though it never really shines, you realize you've done 5 different jobs today. None of them well, none of them with training, and yet no one explains, praises, or complains. In this world, everyone is tired, everyone is necessary, and no one cares that you're from the future, from a place with microwaves and ergonomic chairs. You're part of the wheel now, a creaky, damp, underfed cog in a mud-covered society that survived through sheer stubborn force of will. And you still have to gut something before dinner. You're not sure what time it is, but your fingers are red. Your stomach is hollow, and the sky hasn't changed since morning. It just shifted from gray to grayer. You're sent to the edge of the village where a cluster of children are practicing their spear throws. And by practicing, you mean hurling sharp sticks at a wooden post while laughing maniacally. One kid, maybe 6 years old, throws with such force that the spear quivers on impact. He turns and says something to you with a grin full of missing teeth. You laugh nervously and pretend to understand. He then points to your chest. You don't ask why. Suddenly, a voice booms from behind you. A man towering, wrapped in fur face like carved oak, hands you a practice axe. Teach them, he says. You blink. He walks away. Teach them you. You look at the weapon. It's not sharp, but it's heavy enough to break a wrist. The children look at you expectantly, like you're supposed to know the secret technique passed down from Odin himself. You raise the axe. They giggle. One mimics your stance, badly. Another corrects you. You're now the official buffoon of Viking combat training. Mainstream historical fact. Viking children were often taught to use weapons from a very young age. This wasn't for show. It was survival. Raids, feuds, wild animals. A child had to be useful as soon as they could stand. Fringe, detail. Some Icelandic sagas suggest that particularly strong or promising children were gifted their first weapon in a ceremony involving animal bones and battle songs. You, however, get a splinter and a bruised ego. A little girl shouts, "Try again." She tosses you a spear. It's crooked, the tip wrapped in cloth. You throw it with a grimace. It sails wide and lands in a pile of goat droppings. The children cheer anyway. You're officially part of their games now, which means no rest. They demand you show them how to wrestle next. You feign back pain. A boy climbs onto your shoulders. You stumble. They laugh so hard, someone falls into the snow. You think this might be the nicest moment you've had all day. And then one of them cuts their finger. It's shallow, but the blood spreads quickly. You panic. They don't. A girl about 10 rips a strip of her tunic and binds the wound expertly. You watch, humbled. This is not a world where kids are coddled. These children grow fast, grow tough, and grow weary without complaint. Historians still debate whether Viking boys were expected to become warriors or whether many instead became farmers and traders. But what's clear is that all children were trained in basic survival knife skills, hunting, fishing, even defending the homestead if needed. As the kids drift off toward other amusements, one now chasing a goose with a slingshot, you slump against a cold wall, holding the toy axe like a cane. Your arm aches. Your stomach grumbles. Your dignity limps. But somehow, you feel a bit lighter until a woman marches over with a bundle of reeds and says, "We weave now." You're pulled into yet another chore. This one requires fine motor skills, which you do not have. Your hands are numb, your brain is tired, and the pattern you're supposed to copy looks like it came from a divine revelation. The women around you weave without speaking, their fingers flicking faster than thought. You manage 2 knots before someone sighs and gently takes the reeds from you. You are reassigned. Again, you sit near the fire with the younger children, now helping them sort dried herbs. Sage thyme, something bitter that makes your eyes sting. One little boy offers you a crumb of cheese, and you accept it like a sacred gift. It tastes like salt and ash and gratitude. Somewhere nearby, someone starts humming a tune. It's haunting slow, almost hypnotic. The children hum along. You feel something loosen in your chest. This place is hard, but it's also somehow tender. You feel the ache in your muscles, the burn in your fingers, the smoke in your lungs. But you also feel warmth. Not from the fire exactly, but from being included. Even if you're the awkward outsider, a bell rings a hollow clang made by striking a suspended pan. You're told to prepare for the evening meal, which means gutting fish. Again, your moment is over. Back to work. You're elbow deep in fish guts, and you can't remember what your hands smelled like before this. You sit beside a row of carved wooden tables, all of them covered in various stages of dead fish. Heads here, bones there, organs in a slimy pile that may or may not be used for stew later. The air is thick with the sharp scent of brine salt and something sour you don't want to name. Someone hands you a dull knife. No instructions, just a look that says, "Don't screw this up." You try your best. Slice, scrape, scoop. The guts slide like wet noodles onto the dirt. You wipe your hands on a rag that's already soaked with who knows what. A woman beside you hums a steady rhythm, using it to pace her cuts. Her fish are perfect little fillets. Yours look like they've been through a minor explosion. A man passes by and chuckles. The ocean forgives, but the cook won't, he mutters. You smile politely and continue mangling sea creatures. Mainstream historical fact. Vikings were master fishers. Cod, herring, and salmon were dietary staples, often dried or salted for long voyages. Fish gutting was not just daily work. It was a skill tied to survival and trade. Quirky tidbit. Some evidence suggests Vikings also fermented fish. Yes, like the Swedish surströmming, entire barrels of half-rotted fish were buried and aged, then eaten with apparent pride. You pray that's not what you're prepping now. Historians still debate whether such fermentation methods were everyday fare or reserved for seasonal feasts. Either way, your nose is currently at war with your stomach. When the last fish is gutted and rinsed, the bones are tossed to the dogs who've been watching this entire process like wolves at a buffet. One growls at another. There's a scuffle, and a child tosses a stick to break it up. No one's hurt, but you're reminded again that everything here feels just a little closer to wild. You finally get a break. Not a real one, just the kind where no one is shouting at you for 5 consecutive minutes. You find a quiet spot near a storage shed. Someone has carved runes into the wooden beams. You trace them absent-mindedly. Protection. A prayer. A warning. Hard to say. The wood is rough. The symbols feel old. Then you hear it again. Bickering. Loud, relentless, and very close. 2 neighbors are arguing. You don't understand most of the words, but the tone is universal. Someone didn't return. Someone else is lying. And apparently, that goat has always been sickly. The argument crescendos with one woman slamming a wooden ladle into the mud and storming off. No one else reacts. Just another Wednesday. Privacy doesn't exist here, not in any form. You overhear everything: births, fights, bowel movements. The longhouse walls are thin and communal. Living means you sleep inches from people who snore like drowning bears. If someone has gas, you're an involuntary participant. If someone cries, you hear it through the straw. You try to retreat into your own headspace, but it's not easy. A man sneezes behind you with a sound like thunder. Another hawks something into the snow. You sit down on a log near the fire pit and try to breathe deeply. Then a goat climbs up beside you, just hops up and stares. You stare back. The goat chews something slowly. Neither of you moves. You consider telling it about your day. It would probably understand. Eventually, a young woman calls the goat away. She smiles at you, half amused, half sympathetic, and asks if you're cold. You nod. She hands you a cup of something warm. You sip it. It's thin, tastes like herbs and boiled roots. Not delicious, but warm. You thank her. She nods and walks away, braids swaying behind her. That's the thing about this place. No one's particularly soft, but there are flickers of kindness, a crust of bread, a shared cloak, a joke made at your expense, but with a wink. Still, the lack of alone time eats at you. No doors to close, no headphones to drown it out. You're never fully alone, never fully still. Even the silence is filled with something breathing, chewing, whispering wind. And yet, strangely, you begin to adapt. You learn to carve out little moments. A warm cup, a glance at the sky, a quiet seat with a goat. You still smell like fish guts, and your knees are numb, but you've survived another hour. Small victory. You haven't even eaten dinner yet, and your body already feels like it's being held together by stubbornness and string. But just as you think things might slow down, someone coughs. No big deal, right? People cough. But this one sounds deep, wet. Everyone in the room pauses. They don't say anything. They just listen. The woman who coughed leans against the doorframe, pale as milk, wrapped in a fur cloak that doesn't seem to help. Someone hands her a cup. She waves it away. The atmosphere shifts. In a Viking village, sickness isn't just a nuisance, it's a threat. There's no doctor, no antibiotics, no Google search for what does a hacking cough mean if accompanied by shivering and muttering in Old Norse. You either get better or you don't. You're told to fetch the healer. She's not really a doctor, more like a bone-wearing herbalist who smells like burnt moss and speaks only in half sentences. You find her tending to a bundle of herbs strung upside down in a shed that smells like moldy hay and regret. She follows you back without hurry, looks the woman over, checks her breath, feels her forehead, then mutters something about boiled bark and toad flax and disappears again. That's it. That's the diagnosis. Mainstream historical fact. Viking medicine was mostly plant-based, involving teas, poultices, charms, and rituals. While some herbs were surprisingly effective, like yarrow, for wound treatment much of it was guesswork and grim endurance. Fringe, tidbit. Some Viking treatments included wound songs, chanting poems over injured people to hasten healing. There are written records of magical staves and runes being carved into bark or bone for medical purposes. Whether they worked, debatable. But the faith was real. Historians still debate whether these magical practices were symbolic or believed to be truly curative. But either way, they were better than doing nothing. Because that's the only other option. Later, someone moans in pain from a cut that's turned an angry red. You're asked to help hold him down. Hold him down. You hesitate. They don't. A heated knife is pulled from the fire. The air smells of iron and ash. You look away. He screams. You try not to join him. You hand the healer a rag. She dips it in what might be alcohol or just bitter ale and presses it to the wound. The man passes out, or maybe pretends to. Either way, he's lucky. Your stomach turns. You feel dizzy. They hand you something to chew. It's bitter. Bark root. Doesn't matter. It calms you down slightly. Someone slaps your back. Not bad, they say. You've just passed the local version of a first aid course. You retreat to the edge of the firelight, needing a breath of air. But of course, someone else is already there, squatting with a bandaged hand and eyes wide with fever. He's murmuring something about seeing ravens in the smoke. You pretend not to hear. You ask a nearby child what happens if someone dies. She shrugs. We bury them in the ground, or in a boat, or burn them if it's cold. Cool, comforting. You stare into the flames. They dance and flicker in the wind, casting shadows that move like spirits. A dog howls in the distance, long and low. You remember that you have no health insurance. Not that it matters here. Evening approaches, and the air gets sharper. Your nose runs again. Your knees ache. You look at your chapped hands and wonder how long before one of those small cuts becomes a big problem. There's no ointment, no band-aids, just grit and hope and boiled bark. Someone sneezes. Everyone flinches. You go to wash your hands in a bowl near the fire. The water is murky. Floating things. You hesitate, then wash anyway. The illusion of cleanliness is better than nothing. Someone tells you to chew garlic to stay healthy. You do. It burns your mouth. It stays with you. So does the fear. You lie down later, beside the fire, head spinning, body vibrating from work and cold and worry. A woman hums a lullaby to her baby in a language you barely understand. But the tune is soft, repetitive, comforting. You stare at the ceiling timbers and smoke stains and flickers of orange light, and you think, please let me wake up without a cough. Dinner is served, or rather it arrives with all the ceremony of a brick through a window. Someone slaps a wooden bowl into your hands. It's half filled with a lumpy stew, grayish-brown in color, and thick enough to bend the spoon. You don't ask what's in it. You already know it's mostly gristle. You sit cross-legged near the fire, surrounded by the wet coughs of the sick, the snores of the already asleep, and the persistent chewing of a goat in the corner who may or may not be eating someone's boot. You take a bite. It's warm. That's its best quality. The texture is unclassifiable, somewhere between tendon and old rope. Occasionally, your teeth hit something solid. Bone knuckle. You swallow hard and pretend you didn't feel it crunch. There are root vegetables too, mostly turnip and onion boiled to the point of disintegration. One piece is clearly a mushroom. You try not to think too hard about that either. You look around. No one is complaining. They chew methodically, eyes half closed from fatigue bowls balanced on knees. The stew may be bland, chewy, and vaguely horrifying, but it's food, and food means life. Mainstream historical fact. Viking meals were often one-pot affairs, soups and stews made from whatever was available. Meat was rare for the poor, and most dinners were heavily based on barley, cabbage, turnips, and wild herbs. Fringe detail. Archaeological finds have shown bits of animal teeth, burned bone, and even sand in cooking pots, suggesting the food was sometimes gritty, literally. You wince as your spoon scrapes the bottom of the bowl and hits something that might just be a pebble. A child beside you dips stale bread into their stew, then eats the bread and throws the rest to the dogs. You envy the simplicity of that move. Historians still debate whether mealtimes in Viking villages were quiet communal affairs or filled with tales, riddles, and occasional bickering. Tonight, it's somewhere in between. A man tells a long, slow joke about a cow and a priest. No one laughs until the punchline. Then only two people chuckle. The man grins like he just won a battle. You chew slower now, not because you're savoring it, but because your jaw is tired. A woman offers you a strip of dried apple. It's tough, but sweet. You thank her. She nods. This is as close to dessert as it gets. The fire crackles louder as the wind picks up outside. Someone throws on a new log, sending a plume of sparks into the smoke-dusted air. You wipe your mouth on your sleeve. It's the cleanest part of you. Dinner ends when the bowls are empty. There's no announcement, no cleanup crew. Everyone just slowly returns their bowls to a pile. Maybe rinses them in a trough, then drifts off to whatever task remains. You sit a moment longer. Your stomach is fullish. That's new. Then someone coughs again, deeper this time. You stand and stretch. Your knees pop. Your back cracks. You might be aging at double speed. And then you're told to help with the dishes. You want to scream. The washing area is a barrel of freezing water gray with grease and floating vegetable bits. You dip your hands in, they vanish. You scrub with a chunk of bark that once resembled a sponge. Maybe. You finish after 20 minutes of numbing, wrist-wrenching labor. Your sleeves are soaked, your hands are raw, and your patience is fraying like old rope. You return to the fire. It's quieter now. People are slowly settling in. Someone hands you a thin blanket. It smells like smoke and wet dog. You smile genuinely. It's more comfort than you expected. A man sits beside you and starts carving a small piece of driftwood into a vaguely boat-shaped object. You ask what it is, maybe a ship. He says, then shrugs. Maybe a comb. Depends how tired I get. You nod. That feels true of everything here. You start with a plan, but survival decides what it becomes. Another man passes around a flask. You sip. It burns. You don't ask what it is. It could be mead. It could be pine-flavored punishment. Either way, it makes you feel warmer for 3 minutes. And then it's over. The bowls are stacked. The fire is dimming. People begin lying down on hay, on furs on one another. The room shifts into a chorus of creaks, sighs, sniffs, and quiet mutterings. You curl onto your pile of straw blanket pulled to your chin, belly still slightly turning from the stew. You close your eyes. Somewhere a wolf howls. Of course it does. The straw pokes into your back like nature's idea of acupuncture. It's not soft. It's not even dry. Somewhere beneath you, something tiny with legs is definitely crawling. You shift, but there's no escape. Just a louder rustle and a fresher wave of musty, barn-like aroma. The flea bites come later, but you can already feel the itches forming in your future. You're lying next to 2 cousins. Or maybe they're siblings. You're not sure anymore. The concept of personal space has dissolved entirely. One of them snores with a gurgling rhythm, like a man drowning in porridge. The other one kicks in his sleep, hard, right into your shin. You don't complain. This is just how sleep works here. And then the fire lets out a long, sad crackle and dies down. The longhouse gets colder by the second. Your breath clouds up like a fog machine with low self-esteem. You tuck your arms tighter into your chest. The thin blanket covers about 2/3 of your body. You rotate it every 5 minutes to share the warmth. But there's no real sleep coming. Not yet. A child coughs in the darkness. A woman groans. Somewhere, a goat lets out a half-hearted bleat, followed by a snort that sounds judgmental. You try closing your eyes. It's not darkness. It's textured blackness with the glow of the dying fire still dancing on your eyelids. You focus on the warmth of your own breath. In, out, almost meditative. Almost. And then someone farts. Loud, wet, unapologetic. You open one eye. No one moves. No one acknowledges it. You admire that level of shamelessness. Mainstream historical fact. Viking longhouses were communal sleeping areas. Families, servants, sometimes even livestock, shared the same heated space. Beds were rare. Most slept on furze straw or directly on wooden benches near the hearth. Fringe tidbit. Fleas were such a persistent problem that some households spread dried juniper across sleeping areas, believing the scent might drive them away. Did it work? Not really. But your spot smells faintly piney, so someone tried. Historians still debate whether sleep was divided into 2 phases in medieval Scandinavian culture, like it was in other early European societies. First sleep and second sleep, with a twilight period in between. You appear to be experiencing no sleep, which isn't academically discussed, but feels profoundly real. A scratching sound starts up near the wall. Mice probably, or rats, or something worse with tiny feet and night vision. You roll away from the sound instinctively, only to face someone's hairy forearm 2 inches from your nose. You roll back. Welcome to your new normal. The fire pops one last ember, which lands on the floor with a tiny hiss. The temperature drops again. You shift your legs, and the straw beneath you crackles in protest. Someone whispers something in a language you don't recognize, soft prayer-like. Another person shifts the floorboards, creaking softly. You catch the faint scent of smoked fish and wet fur. This isn't sleep. This is survival with your eyes closed. You wonder what a mattress would feel like right now. Just for one night. Soft bed. A real pillow. The absence of rodents. But here, softness is weakness. Luxury is distraction. You lie still, willing your mind to drift to rest. And strangely, it does. For a moment, you begin to dream, not of modern life, but of snow, of wooden boats, of firelight flickering on carved beams. Your dream self chews barley bread and stares into fog, but even your dreams smell like smoke. You wake when someone stands to stoke the fire. The orange glow returns briefly, highlighting tired faces and tangled hair. A child mutters and turns. An old man mumbles to the coals. The warmth creeps in. You bask in it until it fades again. Another hour passes. You don't know whether you slept or just forgot how to think. You feel heavier, flatter, somehow more floor-like than before. You glance around. Everyone's still here, alive, asleep, mostly. You realize something. This is what surviving looks like. Not glory, not feasts, just warmth stolen in tiny pieces. Straw, shadows, shared breath, the sound of tired people not dying. You close your eyes again, and this time you don't wake when the goat lies down next to you. You wake to murmuring voices and the distant sound of hooves. The fire is little more than ash and memory. Morning hasn't quite broken yet, but already something feels off. Someone bursts through the longhouse door, breathless. You don't understand the words, but the tone is unmistakable. Panic, urgency, tension strung tight like bowstring. You rise too fast and nearly knock over a sleepy child curled beside you. Outside, the air cuts your skin like dry ice. People are gathering, whispering. You squint across the half-light. They're back. The warriors. No trumpets, no banners, just a cluster of hard-eyed men and women, fur-draped and blood-streaked, stepping through the snow like ghosts with boots. Their faces are tired, smoke-darkened. Some limp. Some carry sacks. One drags a small cart behind him, and the thing inside it is covered completely. They've returned from a raid, and you are in their way. You shuffle back instinctively, blending with the rest of the villagers who part like a human sea. The returning fighters say little. They head straight toward the longhouse, toward food fire and rest. Mainstream historical fact. Viking raids were brutal affairs, but not constant. In times of war or resource shortage, raiding parties were dispatched to neighboring villages or even across the sea. These warriors came home to the same villages that nursed their children and brewed their ale. Fringe tidbit. In some Icelandic settlements, it was customary for returning warriors to sleep near the threshold of the longhouse for 3 days to cleanse their spirits before rejoining the family. You really hope that's not tonight's sleeping plan. Historians still debate whether Viking women participated in raids regularly or only in certain tribes. But in front of you now, a woman with a split lip and battle-worn eyes holds a bloodied axe. No one questions her place. You're told to help prepare the welcome meal. It's not celebratory, just necessary. These people are tired, wounded, and hungry. You stoke the fire, fetch what bread remains, and fill bowls with whatever stew you can resurrect from the leftovers. The air fills with the smell of smoked meat and singed onions. It's still bad, but it's warm. They eat quickly, quietly. You sit in a corner, trying to disappear. One of the raiders glances at you. He says something. You don't catch it. He repeats it, louder. A nearby elder laughs. He says you look soft. Like cheese. You nod. That's probably generous. But then unexpectedly, the raider passes you a small pouch. You open it. Inside a piece of dried fruit. Apricot, maybe. Sweet, sticky, slightly magical. You thank him. He just grunts and goes back to chewing. And just like that, you're not quite an outsider. Later, you help bind a wound. A deep gash on someone's shoulder. You hold the cloth while the healer murmurs and presses herbs into the flesh. The raider winces but doesn't cry out. You ask what happened. Arrow, someone says. Missed his heart, hit his pride. The warriors spread out. Some sleep where they sit. Others lean against walls, eyes half shut but always alert. Their weapons never leave their reach. You try not to stare at the cart covered with cloth. No one speaks about it, but you understand. One didn't make it home. You find yourself drifting again toward the fire. You sit beside an older man who's sharpening a blade with slow, steady movements. First time you've seen this, he asks. You nod. He nods too. Takes the shine off, doesn't it? You don't answer. He gestures toward the sleeping forms. They're not heroes, just people. Same as us. Just more used to bleeding. You sit in silence. The fire crackles, and you realize this isn't a movie scene. There's no rousing speech, no dramatic music. Just dirty boots, dried blood, and the smell of cold stew. These people fight. Then they eat, then they sleep, and the cycle starts again. The warriors sleep with one eye open. Even in rest, there's tension in their limbs, like they expect the fight to resume at any moment. One of them twitches, as if mid-battle in a dream. Another whispers names, none of which anyone answers to. You stay low, quiet. You don't want to be noticed right now. A commotion brews at the other end of the village. Voices rise, not angry exactly, but sharp, curious, guarded. You follow the movement weaving between carts and half-melted snow. At the village edge, you see the issue. A merchant has arrived. Or at least someone who claims to be one. He stands beside a laden sled pulled by a weary-looking horse. He's got beads in his beard and a cloak too clean to be local. He smiles, but no one smiles back. His sled holds trinkets, salted meats, thin cloth dyed purple, and several polished knives that gleam like they know secrets. He offers a warm greeting. He gets a cold stare. Here strangers mean risk. You watch the negotiation unfold. It's not haggling, it's a low-level duel. Every word measured, every glance a test. The merchant offers fabric. The elder counters with a worn bronze clasp. The merchant frowns. A boy watching mutters, "That clasp was cursed." No one corrects him. Mainstream historical fact. Viking villages were not isolated from trade. In fact, they were central to it. Norsemen traded across Europe, even as far as the Middle East. But in smaller settlements, trade wasn't business, it was diplomacy. Quirky tidbit: some traders carried protection charms carved from whalebone, claiming they could ward off theft. Historians believe most were just for show, but some had strange runes no one could translate. One such token dangles from the merchant's belt, now shaped like a coiled serpent swallowing itself. Historians still debate whether small Viking communities accepted outsiders easily. Some sagas portray generosity to travelers. Others speak of ambushes, suspicion, or sudden disappearances. It likely depended on the weather and the mood. Eventually, a trade is struck: 2 knives for a heavy block of salt and some dried berries. Everyone watches, eyes narrowed. The merchant smiles too much. You sense he's measuring every face, deciding who's worth remembering or fearing. You return to the village center where someone's sharpening tools. You're handed a blade and told to check the edge. You pretend to know what that means. A girl, maybe 12, sees through you. She takes the blade, tests it on a strip of leather, then hands it back with a smirk. You thank her. Try not to die with it, she says, walking off. Later, as the sun pretends to shine behind its gray veil, you join the group fetching water. It's not a well. It's a hole in the ice. You wait your turn. Behind a line of villagers with buckets, a boy slips. The bucket spills. Everyone groans. You refill it together. No one scolds him, just quiet cooperation. You carry your full bucket, back arms trembling from the weight. A man nearby sees your struggle, takes half without a word. This is Viking kindness, unspoken, unsentimental, and heavy lifting. Back at the longhouse, the raiders are waking. One limps past you with a cloth-wrapped knee and a bruised ego. Another, younger, has already started polishing her sword. They don't say thank you. You weren't expecting them to. You're just glad they didn't take your spot by the fire. But your rest doesn't last. A voice calls your name or something that sounds like it. You're needed again. Something about the food cellar. You trudge to a small wooden door embedded in the snow-packed ground. Inside, cool air, hanging meats rows of clay pots and sacks of something that smells suspiciously like turnip farts. Your job? Inventory. You count by candlelight, trying to guess what's edible, what's spoiled, and what's just pretending to be food. You find a pot labeled with a crude drawing of a rat. You put it back. Slowly, you emerge with a full list in your head and frost on your eyebrows. You tell the elder what you saw. She nods once. You think that means good work. Or you missed the rat pot. Evening is near, again, and you somehow are still alive. You've avoided offending warriors, accidentally stealing food, and catching whatever ghost sickness is haunting the coughing man. You're starting to understand the rhythm. Work, watch, wait, endure. You're not one of them yet, but you're still here, and that counts. You sit by the fire again, bowl in hand, trying not to notice that tonight's stew smells identical to last night's, but with fewer vegetables and more guesswork. Across from you, a woman watches you eat, not judgmentally, just watching, as if assessing whether you're strong enough to make it through the week. She nods once when you finish the bowl. You pass. Then you notice the wooden figure. It's small, rough-carved, and perched in the corner of the longhouse. A humanoid shape, big head, round eyes, slashed mouth. It watches the room like a sentry. Someone lights a small candle beneath it. No one says a word. The air changes, grows quieter. You've just been introduced to the local god. Not Thor, not Odin, not even Freya. This isn't a god you've heard stories about. It's not even named out loud. This is the house guardian, the one who's always watching. You ask someone quietly, "What is it?" She whispers, "We feed it, in case it gets hungry." You stare. "Does it eat?" She shrugs. "Once the food's gone." So maybe. Mainstream historical fact. Many Viking households kept wooden figures called vetur, spirits of the home or land. Offerings were left regularly, bits of food, drops of ale, carved tokens. Not worshipped exactly, but respected. Deeply. Quirky detail. In some areas, if the house spirit was offended, say by a broken rule or unspoken insult, it was believed it could leave the home, taking all good fortune with it. Some families reportedly moved entirely to escape such a cursed emptiness. Historians still debate whether these house spirits were considered distinct from the gods or simply their local shadows, less majestic, more practical. Either way, everyone still gives them their portion before bed. Tonight, someone places a bone near the statue. Another pours a drop of ale into a tiny dish. A third mutters a phrase you can't understand, but it's soft, solemn, almost like a lullaby. You find yourself whispering something too, just in case. Later, you're told to help guard the fence. Why? Because the wolves are back. Yes, wolves, not the poetic kind. The real sharp-fanged, midnight lurking kind. You're handed a torch that sputters and smokes. You hold it like you know how to use it. You do not. You walk the perimeter of the village, boots crunching on snow eyes, darting at every sound. Branches snap. Shadows move. You pretend not to flinch. A nearby man carries a spear and hums softly. You stay close to him. The fence is crude wooden stakes lashed together with rope and hope. One side leans. Another has a visible hole. You ask about repairs. He says spring. You nod as though that makes sense. It does not. Mainstream historical fact. Viking settlements often built rudimentary fences around livestock pens and central homes, but they weren't fortress-like. Predators were a real problem, especially in isolated areas. Fringe, tidbit. Some sagas tell of wolves that were believed to be spirit-sent omens of death or change. One tale claims a wolf circled a village for 7 nights before a fire destroyed half the homes. That's not comforting right now. You hear a distant howl, low, long, close. The man with the spear stops humming. You tighten your grip on the torch. He mutters, "They'll watch." They always watch before trying. You swallow, and then nothing happens. Just silence. The kind that crawls into your ears and won't leave. You finish the patrol and return to the longhouse. Your torch is half gone. So are your nerves. Inside, it's warm again. The candle still burns under the house spirit. No one speaks as you step inside, but someone hands you a cloth to dry your hands. Another gesture, wordless, but kind. You wrap yourself in your blanket and lie down, eyes open, staring at the rafters. Someone snores already. Someone else talks in their sleep. You glance at the wooden figure. It's still staring. Of course it is. You close your eyes and hope the wolves stay behind the fence. It's bathing day. You hear the words whispered like a spell, equal parts excitement and dread. A woman taps you on the shoulder. You're on the list. You ask what list. She doesn't answer. You follow her to a small structure near the woods. Smoke seeps through gaps in the slats. A wooden tub sits in the middle, filled with water, so dark it reflects nothing. Nearby stones glow orange in a shallow pit. A boy with tongs throws herbs onto them. Steam hisses upward, and the smell of juniper and birch stings your eyes. There is no privacy, no screen, just a curtain flapping lazily in the breeze and a stack of old tunics that might be clean or just less dirty. You remove your clothes while maintaining as much dignity as possible. You fail. Someone chuckles. You enter the tub anyway. The water is lukewarm at best. Floating things bump against your legs. Possibly twigs, probably regrets. You sit, slowly, carefully. You are told to scrub with a handful of sand. Mainstream historical fact. Viking hygiene was surprisingly good for the time. Weekly baths were common, usually on Laugardagr or washing day. They used steam baths, hot stones, and even primitive soaps made from ashes and animal fat. Fringe tidbit. Some warriors carried grooming kits, complete with tweezers, ear picks, and combs tied to their belts. Appearances mattered even in a blood-stained society. Lice, however, still won most battles. Historians still debate whether bathing was a communal ritual or a necessary inconvenience. In villages, it seems to have been both cleansing the body while reinforcing social order. If someone smelled too strong for too long, it wasn't just rude, it was dangerous to group morale. You're handed a rag that smells of damp wood and old soap. You scrub, you lather, you rinse, then you scrub again. Because nothing comes off on the first try. Next to you, two boys argue over who gets to pour water on the heated stones. One wins and dumps an entire bucket. Steam fills the room in a choking cloud. You cough. They cheer. A woman hands you a comb. It's bone and sharp. You rake it through your hair and remove enough soot straw and dried fish flakes to build a small thatched roof. You're then instructed to rinse outside with snow. You hesitate. They don't. You are led out into the open, soaking wet, where someone kindly dumps a bucket of slush over your shoulders. You forget your name briefly. Then your body decides to keep functioning barely. You're handed a tunic from the clean pile. It's stiffer than frozen bark, but dry. Mostly. You wriggle into it like a tortured worm and begin to feel human again. Sort of. Back at the longhouse, everyone seems slightly brighter, cleanish. Someone is combing their beard. Another is braiding their hair with thread and bone beads. You sit near the fire, warm for the first time in what feels like a year. You stretch your legs and realize you no longer smell like an angry fish wrapped in goat cheese. That's progress. Then, of course, someone drops a pot nearby. Water splashes. Right on your leg. You sigh. No one apologizes. Cleanliness is a fleeting state. As the night settles in, stories begin. A man with a missing ear leans forward and begins a tale about a woman who married a sea spirit. His voice is slow, almost sing-song, and the room quiets. You don't understand every word, but the rhythm carries you. The story ends in betrayal. Most Viking stories do. You sit clean, but exhausted listening to the crackling fire, the deep tones of a language both harsh and beautiful. Someone passes around a skin of mead. You sip and feel it burn away the lingering cold in your chest. You look at your hands, clean, for now. Tomorrow they'll be back in the mud, but tonight they rest. The next morning arrives like an insult. You wake to the sound of growling, not human, not domestic. The kind that shakes the frost off the walls and makes every sleeping body around you stiffen at once. You sit up, heart pounding. Outside it's still dim, but movement stirs beyond the wooden fence. People are already reaching for weapons, torches, and each other. Wolves, someone mutters. Of course, the livestock are herded into the inner pens. You're handed a torch. Again, your favorite weapon. It sputters in your hand like it's just as terrified as you are. A boy about 10 clutches a spear taller than he is. You want to take it from him for his safety, but he meets your eyes with a stare so solid you lower your gaze first. You join the line at the edge of the village. The makeshift fence stretches around you like a nervous ribcage. Gaps everywhere. One section is held together with rope and prayer, then movement, a flash of gray fur, then another. They're circling. You raise your torch, trying to look bigger, braver, less edible. Mainstream historical fact. Wolves were a legitimate threat to Viking settlements, especially in colder months when food was scarce. They hunted in small packs and often tested boundaries, seeking weak points, livestock, children, unattended stores. Quirky tidbit. In some Norse traditions, wolves were seen as both physical and spiritual predators. A wolf dream could signal betrayal or illness. Wolves were respected, feared, and mythologized, never underestimated. Historians still debate whether wolves were hunted aggressively or merely driven away. Some sagas describe epic one-on-one wolf duels. Others suggest more practical methods, fire noise, and group defense. You hope tonight doesn't require personal heroics. The air is quiet, too quiet, then howling, close. Multiple voices, not large in number, but sharp, deliberate chilling. A spear is thrown into the dark. A yelp, not fatal, but enough. The wolves scatter. You exhale, but no one lowers their weapons yet. One man climbs a tree to check their direction. Another marks fresh prints in the snow with a piece of charcoal. The children go back to tending goats, like this was just a brief intermission. It kind of was. You return to the longhouse torch. Extinguished, heart still hammering. Someone pats your shoulder in passing. You think it's encouragement. It might be sarcasm. The day moves on because it must. You're sent to check the granary where rats have made themselves far too comfortable. You beat sacks with a stick while someone else patches a hole in the roof with straw and mud. The rats aren't afraid of you. One stares unimpressed before vanishing behind a crate. After that, you help repair the fence. The spear-throwing man teaches you how to lash planks together using leather cord and boiled sap. It's sticky, miserable. Your hands ache. But when it holds, when the post doesn't wobble, you feel a flicker of pride. Then the wind picks up and knocks it back over. You feel less proud. Lunch is dried meat and hard cheese. You eat it leaning against the fence you just failed to secure. Someone tells a joke about a warrior who married a fox by mistake. You laugh, even though you didn't catch the middle part. Later in the day, the warriors gather for drills, training, practice. You're told to watch, and horrifyingly, to participate. You spar with a wooden sword. You are terrible. A girl bests you in 2 strikes. A boy trips you without touching you. A man watches you try to parry and shakes his head like he's watching someone drown in sand. But they don't mock you, not loudly, because here, trying still means something. You fall again. You rise again. They nod. By evening, your limbs are jelly. Your hands shake from effort, but no wolves returned. The fence still stands barely, and no one went hungry. The longhouse fills with firelight and stew steam. You sit beside the wall, sore, tired, dirty again. But something's different. You're no longer entirely separate. People talk beside you without glancing over. Someone hands you a cup. You overhear your name, not mockingly, just included. You lean back against the wood and close your eyes. Outside, the wind howls, but softer now. And you realize this place may not care for your comfort, but it notices your persistence. That's something. Tonight, you can't sleep, not from discomfort, though the straw is scratchy and someone's feet are definitely in your space, but from something else. A hum beneath your skin. A strange clarity. A realization that you've crossed a threshold. You're still you, but different. You rise quietly, stepping over limbs, cloaks, and a child who clutches a doll made of sticks and feathers. The longhouse groans softly as the wind presses against its frame. Outside, the night is dark and thick, like ink spread too far across parchment. You walk slowly toward the water's edge. There's a small stream behind the huts. Not large, just a sliver of moving reflection, winding between stones and moss. You kneel beside it, the cold soaking through your knees. You stare at your reflection. Your face looks older, not aged, just worn, like a stone in a river. Not dulled, shaped. You dip your hands into the stream. The chill is sharp, but you don't flinch. You wash your face, letting the cold wake something up inside you. Then slowly you look up and see the stars. They're clearer here, sharper. Fewer lights on Earth means more in the sky. Behind you, the village sleeps. Fires crackle. Someone coughs. A dog lets out a dream bark. But here, it's still. Wide. Real. Mainstream historical fact. The Norse placed great importance on the stars, not just for navigation, but as silent witnesses to the world's story. Constellations carried meaning, omens, lessons, quirky detail. Some Vikings believed that a warrior's soul traveled to the stars if they died far from home. Others thought the stars were the sparks from the gods' anvils scattered through the night. Historians still debate whether stargazing held personal or only spiritual significance, but the sagas mention them often whispers from above. You breathe deeply. For once, it doesn't hurt. The cold doesn't feel cruel, just present. You rise and head back, passing the wooden idol at the village's edge. It hasn't moved, obviously, but the candle beneath it is still burning even though no one remembers lighting it. You nod to it just in case. Back in the longhouse, people shift as you re-enter. One opens an eye to glance at you, then closes it again. No suspicion, no challenge, just sleep. You curl back into your place blanket, up to your chin, still warm from absence. A nearby child murmurs in his dreams something about wolves, or boats, or bread. You close your eyes, and you remember everything. The burning soap water, the splintering fence, the rats, the laughter after your 10th fall, the quiet nods, the shared cups, the scraped knees, the goat that stole your cloak, the fish guts, the sword practice, the way the firelight made even the fiercest warriors look briefly unknowably human. You survived. More than that, you belonged. At least a little. You realize that in this place, strength isn't noise, it's repetition. Quiet effort. Days built from discomfort and done anyway. Tomorrow, you'll wake to more mud, more tasks, more aches. But tonight, the village breathes around you like a single living thing. And you sleep not deeply, not softly, but without fear. The final morning arrives gently. No shouting, no wolves. Just the soft creak of wood, the slow stir of embers, and the hum of breath shared in warmth. The world outside is still cloaked in mist, quiet and pale, as if the sky has momentarily forgotten how to wake. You open your eyes before the fire is stoked, before the chores begin, before someone hands you a bucket or a blade or a complaint. And you lie there just a little longer than usual. Something inside you has shifted. Your body still aches, yes. Your hands are raw. Your tunic still smells like smoke and salted fish. But your breath is calm now. Your pulse isn't racing. You're no longer a stranger looking in. You're part of the rhythm. You rise slow and careful, as if trying not to wake the morning itself. Someone nearby mumbles a greeting. You nod. No words needed, just presence. You step outside. The frost glistens like spun silver. The village is draped in hush. For the first time, you notice the way light breaks over the thatched roofs, bending through ice crystals. A child runs by bare feet on snow laughing. You don't wince for them. They don't need it. You walk the path, past the longhouse, past the fences, past the idol with the always burning candle. You kneel once more at the stream and cup your hands not to wash, but to sip. The water is cold and clean and still tastes like stone, but this time you notice the clarity. You return to help with the morning fires. No one tells you what to do. You already know. You add dry straw, split the logs just right, shield the sparks from the wind. Someone watches from the corner of their eye and nods. Later, you help repair a cracked beam in the granary. Your knots are steadier now. The rope listens to your hands. You don't rush. You just move. Lunch is simple. Barley bread and dried berries. Someone hands you theirs. You've earned it, they say. You accept it without protest. And then nothing urgent happens. No raids, no screams, no illness, just a day. The kind they all hope for. A day of survival without struggle. The fire crackles. A woman sings a quiet song about the sea and the wind, and a man who never returned. The child, with the stick doll, curls up near your leg asleep. A warrior sharpens a blade slow and steady, the same pace you breathe. You glance at the wooden house spirit. The candle flickers. You nod. And slowly, the day begins to dissolve. Dusk arrives without hurry. Shadows lengthen like exhalations. You help close the fence gate, tighten the rope stack, the kindling, and bring in the goats. They bleat once in protest, then settle. The longhouse grows golden and dim. Bodies settle into furs and straw. Your place, your exact space, has been left for you. You lie down. The blanket feels softer than ever, not because it's changed, but because you have. And as the final embers glow low, and the snoring returns, and the child beside you dreams of wolves or stars or honey, you find yourself smiling just slightly, because you made it, not by strength, not by brilliance, but by becoming part of the rhythm. You inhale once, deep and slow. And now, as the fire dims, we slow down and say goodnight, remembering just how lucky you are today. Thank you for being with me through every emotion, every wonderful moment of this journey. It has been an adventure, and I am so grateful to have shared it with you. As we close this story, I wish you a peaceful evening, filled with dreams, filled with wonder and goodness. Rest well. You deserve it. And when you are ready for the next story, I will be here waiting to accompany you again.